To represent Oakland and the theme of change, we have two speakers today, two super talented Oakland musicians, Jennifer Johns and Kev Choice. Jennifer is a soul singer. Her music switches between soul, hip-hop, Afrobeat, and she's opened for the likes of Lauryn Hill, Common, Mos Def, and many, many more singers. Kev Choice is a pianist, an MC, and a music historian. He's got his master's degree in jazz. Thank you so much, both to Kev and Jen.
Good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing? I guess while he's getting that started, I could start off and do some music. It's a pleasure to be here this morning with my sis Jen, who's off in South Africa, doing some incredible things, learning a lot about herself, learning a lot about freedom. Her mission to go out there was she wanted to ask people about freedom, what freedom meant to them, and she's created this whole thing, the Fun Manifesto. Jen, can you hear us?
I can. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. You know how we always started off, so why don't you do that for the beautiful people? Say hello.
I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you. Oh, my soul, rejoice and take joy, my King, in what you hear. Let me be a sweet, sweet, sweet sound in your
I know one day we gon' make it. I know one day we gon' have just what we're fighting for. Just what we've been fighting for. They can't take this love from us. They can't take real love from us. It's deeper than they know. Yes, it's deeper than they know. Hey, and my soul has no limitations. My life is priceless. Yeah, and my faith is endless. Yeah, and I believe in truth. The truth. Yeah. As long as justice escapes us, we live for the struggle. We keep holding on, and we keep pushing on. And let me tell you now, I know one day we gon' make it. I know one day we gon' have just what we're fighting for. Just what we've been fighting for. They can't take this love from us now. They can't take this love from us. It's deeper than they know. Yes, it's deeper than they know. Yeah. And you forgave all my faults, all possibilities, and all of my failures. Ever so patient, knew my potential was worth every moment. Yeah, you believed in me when they doubted, gave me relentless strength to exceed all the expectations. Yo, when we keep holding on, and we keep pushing on, and get me to you, Oakland. I know one day we gon' make it. I know one day we gon' have just what we're fighting for. Just what we've been fighting for. They can't take this love from us now. They can't take this love from us. It's deeper than they know. Yes, it's deeper than they know. You got me falling now.
falling for the thrill. I'm so jealous.
So that's just how we can get warmed up, introduce each other. How you feeling, Jen?
I'm so sad. I was trying to sing along with you a little bit. I know that there's a little bit of a latency. I love that song.
I felt it, though. I felt it.
I'm really honored to have been asked to be a part of this conversation, to talk about change. We come from a truly revolutionary vibration, being from Oakland, and it's always been in my bones. And as I approached how it was that I wanted to talk about change, and through the lens of this journey that I've been on around freedom, I've had to take a step back and really think about how I find myself being myself at this time, and why I'm here. And so I harken back to being 6 years old and hearing We Are the World for the very first time. It was one of the most fantastic days of my life. I remember it very, very clearly, actually. And I heard We Are the World, and I was like, this is so cool. And the vibration was awesome, and the all these different voices that I recognized, and I loved it. And I couldn't wait to get home and talk to my parents and sing this whole rendition of the song. I was 6 years old. And I could see myself performing the whole thing, and all of that. So we're in the kitchen, and I do my thing, and I sing the song, and my parents think I'm cute, because I am, because I'm cute, you know. And and so I sit down, and we're talking, and my parents decide that this is the time to explain to me why that song was written. And what was at the beginning of this evening an amazing evening sharing with my parents turned out to be probably to date the worst day of my life. And my parents in that moment had to explain this concept called hunger to me. And I was devastated. And I still remember asking my father, who worked for United Airlines, I was like, you work for the airlines, and there are planes, and there's this thing called hunger in this place called Africa, but we're not going to finish our dinner. So can't we just load up the planes and put everybody's leftovers on the plane and then take it to the far-off place called Africa? Like, I don't get it. And I remember asking him, like, have you spoken to the pilots about this? Like, I know that they're really nice guys, and we could totally do this. And, all of my friends, I was ready, and my mom worked for Mills College, and the chefs over there were super sweet, and they always had these meetings, and I was like, I know that we can bring them these food. Like, it's totally fixable. And my parents looked at me with all of this energy and hope, and they were like, it doesn't work that way. There are these things, and they're called governments, and these governments have got these rules, and we need to, that's just not gonna work. And I was so sad, and my heart hurt so bad for humanity. I was bummed for a couple of days, and I used to be like a really energetic, outdoorsy kid, and but I was depressed. And so one day my father was like, yo, so what are you gonna do about it? And he had a tendency to punk me into a good idea. And so I was like, all right, what can I do? So I collected my band of renegade Care Bear homies on the block and at church. And I told them about this thing called hunger. And I was like, yo, we have got to end this thing called hunger, because it is horrible. And Michael Jackson says that we need to raise money in order to send it to Bishop Tutu so that he could then send the money to the people in Africa so that we could stop this thing called hunger in this far-off place called Africa. And inherently, I knew that that was stupid, because I knew that money was not an ingredient to the food that I was eating. All of the elders on my block, my grandparents, they all had gardens. My grandfather would go crawfishing once a month. And so I knew that dollar bills were not an ingredient to gumbo or to chow mein or to that really amazing bread that my grandmother made. I knew that there was something that I was missing about the way that these adults who were clearly out of their minds were functioning. But Michael Jackson said that we had to do it, so I was down. So I got my band of crazy homies together, and we raised all this money, and we sent it to Michael Jackson to send to Bishop Tutu to send to the starving people in Africa. And this sing-a-thon that we did was 8 hours long. And somehow I convinced a bunch of adults and a bunch of kids to sing for 8 hours, We Are the World, on repeat. What? Like, I think about that now even, and I'm like, that was power. We raised like 10,000 rags, and we sent it to the starving people in Africa, and I wait. And I'm convinced, because we sang with a whole bunch of love and a whole bunch of energy, that someone was going to get on the news and be like, yo, we fix hunger, woohoo! And then I could like go back outside and I could play double dutch and I could listen to New Edition and it'd be all good. Except that that didn't ever happen. And I've been pissed ever since. I'm not pissed, I mean more like irritated. I've been really frustrated with humanity ever since. And when I sit down and I think about the way that I approach my activism, it's from that 6-year-old place where somehow I learned about hunger and got stuck in this world where the adults are totally screwing everything up. And so basically, the long and the short of the trajectory of my career has been trying to get back to double dutch, has been trying to get to a space where I can leverage art for social change.
Thank you. Give it up for Jen for that. Well, I remember hearing that song too, and I just like the music part of it. I like to sing the whole choir and being in the studio. I feel like that was just an amazing story. But part of my journey being a musician started here in Oakland. I just remember being a very shy, quiet child, kind of growing up in East Oakland during that time in the late '80s. It was a lot of things going on in my environment that I couldn't relate to. My mother tried to keep me shielded from, so I was kind of shielded from a lot of things. So I kind of stayed in the house a lot, listening to her records or watching movies. Of course, watching things like Purple Rain, Under the Cherry Moon, which was one of my most influential movies. I got to give a shout out to Prince because it's still heavy in my heart, you know what I'm saying? But when I got introduced to music, I took a piano class at Westlake Junior High School. And we started off with just the very basics. We didn't even get to touch the actual piano for the whole first semester of the class. And I remember just, being so intent on like, I wanted to learn, so I was doing anything that the teacher told me to do and to get to that point. And then once we actually got to be able to put our hands on the instrument and started learning our first pieces, it really opened me up from being this shy, quiet kid who was kind of to himself, trying to stay away from out of troubles, trying to stay away from danger, a lot of things that was going on around me and my family. And it finally gave me a voice. And then I immediately started writing my own songs as soon as I started, learning keys and learning notes. I felt like this music was going to give me a chance to create a positive influence in my environment. Seeing all the negative things, I was like, if I could have this music to express myself, to express how I really feel, it could help influence positive change in my environment. So, people going to jail or people getting killed, I could show that there's a different aspect of it, because I see I know my family, we're trying to stay together, we're loving, we're supportive, so I know that there's other avenues to create, ways of living in the world. And a real tragic experience is 15 years old. I think I just started Skyline High School. A friend of mine, we all grew up in the Lake area. We grew up in East Oakland, then I moved over to the Lake. My mother kind of wanted to, had a single mother. She had a good job. She worked down in Jack London before it was what it is now. I mean, there might have been a couple of little restaurants and some little stores in the back down there, but she had a job down there working for an owner of some hotels downtown. She was just a secretary, and so she moved us over to the Lake. When a single mother was able to afford a one-bedroom apartment by the lake with two children. So we might have had sometimes it was a one-bedroom, sometimes it was a two-bedroom, whatever she can get at that time. But we were able to live in the Lake, so she moved me over here so I can go to Westlake, which was a little better option at that time. One of my friends was actually killed at a party in the Oakland Hills, and I think from that moment on, I was like, I gotta really use my voice in music to make a change and to get away from this environment. And that led me on to just so many opportunities. Eventually, getting a scholarship to go to college after I graduated from Skyline High School, get a master's degree, and then coming back home and performing with so many different artists. But just having that voice, that creative outlet to make change in my environment, to make change also within myself, to bring out the voices within me or the creativity in me, it's always been something that I've dedicated my life to inspire my environment, to inspire my people, and using this gift to create change. So I know Jen has something to say after that, right?
Yes, of course I do. Mm-hmm. I always have something to say, Kev.
Definitely.
When I was 19, I moved to Los Angeles. I started this live music spoken word event. I wanted to, again, leverage my voice for social change, but every time I tried to engage in it, it felt like I was too small. Like somehow I wasn't powerful enough to like cure hunger with one song type of thing. And so I think I bought into the idea of becoming a megastar. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go and record an album. I'm gonna become a star, and then I'll have the money, which still is not an ingredient to food, but whatever. I'll have money, and then money will allow me to get the kind of support that is necessary for me to go and stop the violence where I come from, cure hunger. I knew that music had something in it for me to make that change. So I recorded my album in 2003, put it out in 2004, Heavy Electromagnetic Solar Poetic Jungle Hop. I began to travel all around the world, and I was blessed to perform with everybody short of Jay-Z and Nas inside of like 2 years that I ever thought I would perform with. It was really, really mind-blowing, the power of my intention, the ability to get on stage with so many people in such a short period of time. It was a blessing and a curse because I was pushing so hard and I was working so hard that I barely remember half of the experiences that I had doing it all. There were a few people that I performed with that I had looked up to my whole career since I was a little girl, that when I got to play with them, they weren't balanced. They were saying powerful things, but the way that they showed up in the world wasn't exactly who I wanted to be. And I could tell that I wasn't balanced enough to take on becoming a megastar. Like that required some maturity that I did not have. One day I was living in New York and I came home to the Bay Area to perform for International Women's Day. And I sit down on the couch and my mother goes to the bathroom and she passes a cup of blood. And she winds up in the hospital for a month while they try and figure out where in her large intestines she's bleeding from. And this nurse tells me that it's called diverticular disease. I didn't understand it, so she prints this thing out and she basically explains to me that diverticular disease is as a result of it's naturally occurring, I guess, but it has grown to be more acute over time since we've introduced genetically modified foods. And so, of course, I was, again, livid. And I understood that my mother was eating what she could afford, being where we're from, being a single mom, raising these kids and so forth, and that these types of foods were available to people who lived in urban areas. Fast forward, I find myself after she comes out of the hospital and I'm in Hawaii. And while I'm there, 2 airlines shut down overnight. ATA Airlines and Aloha Airlines, and I'm now stuck in Hawaii for 6 weeks. And I could tell that Spirit was trying to tell me something about my journey, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. So I go to the grocery store, and my attempts to eat healthier failed because I go to pick up this pineapple, and it's $6, and I was like, but we're in Hawaii, I don't understand, how is this possible? That you could that just doesn't make any kind of sense. And I learned that Hawaii was importing 85 to 90% of their food. So literally, even if they grew it in Hawaii, they'd send it to mainland America to get tested by the FDA and then sent back. And I was like, damn, how much gas are we paying for versus how much food? You know what I mean? Like, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me at all. And then these organizations started calling me and saying, hey, will you perform for these benefits? It's to raise money for these funerals. These women have been murdered by their husbands who are addicted to ice. It was 2 different women and 1 kid, all separate incidences. And I could tell really, really clearly that I was being shown something. And it reminded me of being in Oakland and in the 80s. And what I saw was that when you can't afford to take care of yourself, you then become violent and you hurt the people that are around you. And I discovered that I needed to remove this idea of money and begin to lean back into what really creates the ingredients of food. And I learned that I needed to leverage art for social change. So I became a part of Green for All. I was the first class of fellows at Green for All, which was started by Van Jones. I'm sure you guys know him. Big up to Van Jones. I started doing work around food justice. And I got a grant to travel around the country and ask brown people about sustainable living. And yet again, as I started this journey, I could tell that Spirit was trying to tell me something. So I would ask people their definition of sustainable living. And what I learned very quickly was that the term was not culturally relevant. So I would ask, what is your definition of poverty? And everyone could answer that like so. Like right now, if I were to ask this room right now, what is your definition of poverty? Immediately, you all have an answer. But if I ask you what your definition of sustainability is, it's going to take a little bit more time for you to think through it. And what I realized is that the human mind is creating what it imagines. We're constantly creating these things, right? And I had to slow down for a moment and figure out how I could inspire a different way of being through my art. During that journey, I met two people that turned out to be really, really profound in my life. One was Dr. Jeff Duncan Andrade, who started a school called Roses and Concrete. And he talked about it wasn't poverty that was the problem, it was the impact of the absence of wealth that was the problem in our communities. Because without space that wealth provides, there's no room to think about who you are meant to be on this planet. And that really, really opened up my mind like, wow. And then I met Set Shakur, who is Tupac's sister and Afeni Shakur's daughter. And she turned out to be one of my dear friends. And she talked to me about the idea that poverty meant that you didn't have a right to your life. That affected me in huge and profound ways. And then soon come, I started making music with Kev Choice and started traveling and making music with this dude. And now I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, just kind of bouncing off what she said about Jeff Andrade, that school, Roses and Concrete, and about making change. Because just like Jen, you know, we all grow up wanting to be superstars, wanting to be the biggest, the best MC, the best singer, you know, make the most money, win Grammys and all of those things. And that was always my goal. Even though I went to school and college and, you know, got my degree, I was always like, once I graduate, I'm gonna put out albums, I'm gonna tour all around the world, I'm gonna be the best. You know, coming from Oakland, we have the hunger to, you know, we want to be the best. We want to show the world our gifts and our talents. We often think outside of ourselves or outside of, you know, our community. And I've had great opportunities to tour with some amazing artists, some of the best in Oakland. From my first big tour was Michael Franti and Spearhead, and then tour with Guapale and tour with Lyrics Born, Zion I, Jen Johns, tour with Too Short,
Lauryn Hill.
Lauryn Hill, yeah, all of that. Actually, I'm gonna just make I hate when people like saying now, Kev Choice, who's toured with Lauryn Hill and Too Short. Like, I feel like it puts a definition in front of you besides the fact that I'm just, you know, an artist, an MC myself. It doesn't matter who I've toured with or who we worked with. It's really about, you know, what we do individually. So I hate when people run down the whole list, even though that's kind of how it's natural to do. But that to be said, I've worked with all these artists, and then it ends. It's like, okay, you go on a 2-month tour, you go all around the world, you're excited, and then you come home, it's like, okay, now what are you gonna do? Because tours don't last 12 months a year. It's not like a steady job where you're 9 to 5 and you're getting that paycheck every 2 weeks. So I would go on these amazing tours, and it looks good on Facebook, and it looks good on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm over here in Paris, Eiffel Tower, all over the world. I'm in Budapest, everywhere, and then I come back home to Oakland. It's like, okay, what do I have? What am I creating here that's gonna sustain myself? If I get into an argument with this band leader and they put me out the band, because I'm kind of strong-minded, right? You know, so I got my own ideas of how things should go, and I've actually been fired from a lot of those bands, and I'm not afraid to admit it. You know what I'm saying? But that's because I always had my own idea. I've always had my own voice, and I wanted to create that. But it also got me thinking, like, okay, so what am I gonna do to sustain myself after all of these artists are done touring? Or what if they decide to stop touring for a while? So I started doing my own music, and also realizing, coming from Oakland, I always wanted to give back, and that's kind of how I started getting into education. And started off just, you know, really working with a mentor of mine, Khalil Shaheed, who had this thing called Old Town Jazz Workshop. And just basically a program where every 2 times a week after school, we get together with kids, middle school, high school, and just, you know, teach them jazz music. And then that went on to doing things like Elevate Oakland, where we would go into the schools, whether it be McClymonds or Castlemont or Oakland Public Schools, doing workshops with kids. This year I got hired to Oakland School for the Arts on the piano faculty. I've always resisted being kind of a full-time teacher. I'm not like 8 to 5, but more like I'm at a school every day. Like today, after this, I'm gonna go to OSA and work with my middle school students. 3 times a week, I'm at Roses and Concrete, where Jen was at before she left. But it made me start thinking about, taking my mind from being that megastar and making all this money, and now working with these youth and seeing how that is just as important, and how the only way we're gonna build and the only way we're gonna keep our community sustainable is really working with the youth. You know what I'm saying? We can build all these fancy buildings, we can do all, raise the rent, have all these amazing restaurants, but if we're not taking care of our children, which is our future, then our city really is, there's really no hope for our city. And I saw myself in a lot of these students, and I really, all I needed was somebody to guide and somebody to invest in me and give me hope that I can take my dreams and my hopes and really make them come true. So being involved in education, I feel is something, and I've actually worked with Pandora doing performances in the school. So, I got to give them credit for, giving back and being a corporation that's actually helping artists like myself go into the schools, because they treat you like superstars, because to them they don't have that scope of, oh, they never see it at Jay-Z or a Nas. So when I get on stage and I perform, to them it's seeing something that's like almost surreal to them, like, wow, you actually perform, and how did you learn how to do that, and how, like, they come up to the keyboard, they're just so curious. And that's, to me, that's one of the most powerful forms of change, is working with youth. So it's something that's given my life another purpose. And I passed up tours this year to go to Nepal. I could be sitting in South Africa with Jen right now, because I know I want to be there with her, but at the same time, it's like I was like, I'm gonna invest this year to work with these kids. I'm gonna stick it out, day in, day out, and it's a beautiful thing. And seeing kids, like last night, we were working with kids from the age of, I guess, 11 to 16, performing at the Fox Theater. This is a place that, when I was growing up, the Fox was, number one, it was closed. It wasn't even open. It was shut down, and it's like a surreal experience to be able to support youth doing something so big in scope. And I know that's gonna, right now, they may not see it. And even backstage, we got to get on them. We got to, keep them in line. There's problems, there's fights, there's bickering, people cussing each other out, there's all kind of things going on. But in the scope of things, they'll look back on those experiences just like how Jen looked back on seeing, that we are the world, and it sparks things in them that really will affect change for years and years to come. So that's really one thing that this year has taught me, is like giving back to the youth, giving to the community is just as important as having 12 Grammys or whatever, because people with 12 Grammys, they crazy as hell too, like, what I'm saying? So,
The long and the short, because I know we're probably close to the end of our time, I do believe that Kev's brother has a project called Our Thoughts Manifest Our Actions, or Create Our Future, rather. And it's so true. What we focus in on is what we create in this world. I feel like there's so much energy that we put towards fighting for freedom. There's a lot of resistance energy. We find ourselves in relationship to poverty and hunger and violence and so forth in an antagonistic way. Instead of living in joy, we are in resistance to violence, or we are in fighting for freedom. And it seemed somewhat antithetical to me. So I decided that I wanted to chase the sun around the world and ask people about their definition of freedom. And I went to my homegirl Set's house, and I said, yo, I'm gonna travel around the world, I'm gonna ask people about freedom. And I won't use all the expletives that she used when she was talking to me, but what I will say is that she was like, you light-skinned and middle class, what you gonna do, roll up in the hood and tell people that they ain't free? And I was like, yeah, it wasn't cool. And it was a really deep conversation, because what I was trying to say was that I wanted to spark in the consciousness what the answer wasn't as important to me as asking people, and then knowing that that was like planting a seed, and that at some juncture, big or small, people would then manifest some freedom in their life, right? And she was like, yeah. Whatever it is you're gonna do, you better show up free. And I thought that by doing this, I was showing up free. And so she actually kind of trapped me at her house for like 3 days. And during that period of time, Afeni, God rest that brilliant soul, she told me that, yeah, right, take one in for her.
Afeni Shakur, for those who may not know, rest in peace.
She told me that my job was to sing for the fighting people. And I didn't completely get it, especially since we had had so many conversations about the role of spirituality and social justice movements. And she told me that I needed to learn their music, that the lumpen proletariat had put out this album, and one of the first things that would happen when they would raid the buildings and so forth is they got rid of the music. Ain't that heavy? That's heavy, right? Is that it was the music, it was the creation that they knew would transform the people, and that's what had to go first. So she told me that I needed to learn the music of the lumpen proletariat, and she told me that I needed to sing for the fighting people. And when I got here, I started asking people about their definition of freedom, and then again learned very quickly that people can tell you what freedom is not, but they couldn't tell me about their own personal freedom, what freedom was. And I was failing at my job. I thought for sure I was going to be back in these 3 weeks and have to look at everybody and tell them that, you know, I tried, but it didn't quite work. I got to Cape Town, and again, the energy shifted. And I felt exhausted and really tired because people were telling me what freedom was not. I spoke to Set, and I remembered that I was supposed to show up free. And I remembered when I talked about what it meant to be free for me, and that is to sing. And that freedom is not a rational thing. What we're longing for in this world is not utopia. In many ways, it's apocalypse. What we're longing for in this world is this cacophony of craziness that allows us to be each other's answered prayers. And so in singing for the fighting people, my work is to inspire people to be as crazy brilliant as they are. That's my job. I give thanks for having had such amazing teachers in my life. And again, I say thank you so much, Afeni, for finding me worthy of your time and your prayers and your wisdom, because it has shaped who I am on this journey. So I wrote this thing that I'm going to read to you guys, and I had started it a year or so ago, and it is called the Fun Manifesto. This journey is called the Fun Manifesto. Fun stands for Free You Now. Be bold in your dedication to fun, for fun is the gateway to freedom. Unabashedly pursue your own happiness with passion and purpose. Be devoted to your own joy as defined by you and only you. Know the whole world is relying on you to be fun, have fun, and share fun, to live, love, and laugh often, all the time without ceasing, for your fun is like the light. It makes the world brighter. It is contagious and inspires us all, reflects us all, gives life to us all, so don't let us down. Investigate your fun in every moment of every day. Search for and through your fun relentlessly so that you may better understand yourself and unwrap your purpose on this planet. For you are the missing piece that completes this greater puzzle. Have fun now. In this time of killjoys and curmudgeons, it is imperative that you are boundless. People fear what they do not know, and fear is the only force strong enough keep us from freedom. And wars and violence, so make great love, amazing food, inspired music, dance until you break, laugh hard and often. For fun is the elixir, the medicine, the cure, the panacea, and it is your spiritual practice. So free you now.
I want y'all to look out the window. It's a beautiful view.
wrote this song dedicated to my city. It's called Never Gonna Give You Up. No matter how you treat me, never gonna give you up. So don't you think I'm leaving, never gonna give you up. No matter how you treat me, never gonna give you up. Never gonna give you up. I know dudes that died for you, trying to defend your name, and dudes that kill for you, and dudes that still love you, even though you're starting to change. Something feels the same every time I turn around. You adding something to your frame. You was beautiful from the start, rough around the edges, but I knew it was in your heart. Taught me so many lessons every time I was neglected. I felt so at home. I left you for 1 minute, came back, something was wrong, and I could tell. You used to welcome me with open arms. Now you looking at me strange, just as if I don't belong. We had a bond so strong, thought we'd always be connected. I was part of you, you were part of me. You turned me into a legend I never would have expected. I should have seen it coming. You started running with that one crew. They wanted to develop you. All they did was exploit you. Guess you wasn't bothered because you loved all the attention. It made you feel important now. People coming for you out of state and across borders. You looking more attractive. I'm seeing how you're growing. You got so much to offer, especially since your sister crossed the water, started running people off because the cost to be with her was hella crazy. You hated being in her shadow, chip on your shoulder. You felt she was the realest, always stayed up on the culture. Had a reputation, dangerous. People knew that parts of you nothing to play with, so misunderstood. And those that don't know better would just say you was all hood. They never made an effort to see everything you stood for. The pride of your folks sparked the type of hope to make a slave start a revolt. I represent you to the fullest, and that's part of my oath. And when I die, bury me under the bark of your oak. I remain by your side no matter what the extent. I seen a lot of real ones came and went, but I vowed that I'm never gonna give you up. No matter how you treat me, never gonna give you up. So don't you think I'm leaving, never gonna give you up. So don't you think I'm leaving, no. We share so many moments, it's hard to imagine a world without you. I can't fathom from the triumph, the tragic. You gave me a pride and passion, I was young and naive. You taught me rules of the game and keep a trick on my sleeve. You had a knack and the instinct for pimps, hustlers, thieves, plus revolutionaries, artists, athletes, and dreamers. From everywhere around the globe, we will meet up, never forget how you showed me how mean the streets was, so cold. 15 years old, took my homie on some bullshit at a party, man, God bless his soul. It's a part of you, man, it's way out of control. A lot of shit is going on and I can hardly condone. Still can't leave you alone. Your affection magnetic, and certain days I sit and gaze and on your aesthetic. Looking at you is like staring at my own reflection, trying to learn how to embrace my own imperfections. And recently, you're going in a whole new direction, and I don't feel the essence of my days of adolescence. It's people coming to you, they don't know who you are. They opportunists, they clueless, they don't know how to do it. They called the police on us, we was just doing our music. They trying to kick my people out, man, that's on that bullshit. But I'ma keep fighting for you, my city, and I'ma keep living for you, cause I'm never gonna give you up. No matter how you treat me, never gonna give you up. No matter how you treat me, never gonna give you up. No matter how you treat me, no matter how, how y'all feeling out there today? And let me hear you say, oh yeah. And say, oh yeah. And if you're fighting for your freedom, say, hell yeah. Hell yeah. And if you try to make a change, say, oh yeah. And just never, never, never give up. Never, never, never give up. Sing it, Gene. Sing it, Gene, loud.
I love you, Oakland. I love you.
Give it up for Jen Johns, y'all. First time perform live, just for y'all, right here.
Yo, I want to say one last thing. Change is about what we value. And then we assign like dollar bills and things like that to it. But if we're about changing anything in Oakland or anywhere in the world, it's about making sure that we, A, show up for how we value ourselves first. Be the most illy fantastic human being you can be for you. Change you for the world, and it makes it so much easier to value the world when you value yourself the most.
Ashe.
Thank you, Jen and Kev. Please give another round of applause to them.